This project's a good one for all you turners out there. I've got a bowl that I turned a while ago out of olive ash with these reeds, and I'm going to put some little beads or peas in this middle section. So I'm going to show how I did that, starting with the marking out. So here's the bowl as it was originally turned, without any beads. Now that reed, that little pipe along there, matches this tool, and this is the first thing you really need to think about. Pick the tool, turn that reed so that it fits that tool, and with a little bit of wiggle room either side. So that's what we want, and that makes for our bead in this direction. So our unit is now the width of this bead. So there's the width, that's now our unit as we go along. Now originally I thought about putting beads like this all the way around, like a whole series around. But when I did a little bit of a trial, I found actually it's really difficult to do, and partly because of that, but also because of just the design, I decided actually that doing this bead and reel was a lot nicer. So I decided to make a series of these little sections of beads with a reed in between. So I needed to divide this up into 8. And the easiest way to do this, if you've never done this before, is with a bit of, this is masking tape that's been doubled over. You wrap it around the bowl until you get an accurate circumference like that. Then you can take the tape and divide it, and there's your half. You divide it again for quarters, and divide again for eighths. So you can have a series of lines there that now accurately represent the reed divided into 8. So that's my plan here. I think you can see that. I have little groups of 3 with a space in between. So having worked that out, one of these will be in the center of this first bead. The next division is here in the center. So that now marks the beginning of the center bead, and then you've got one on either side, and so on. So having worked out the marking, I'm going to now look at how I hold the bowl. When you turn a bowl, normally you have a sort of dovetail chuck here that grips it, and you could use that as a way of holding it, but I'm choosing to put the bowl into this vise. I've got softwood jaws and I've padded underneath like this, so I'm getting a good grip across the bowl like so. So that enables me to work all around and put some pressure on it. Before I start carving, let me just talk about the grain, because this is a sort of interesting issue here. You can see that if we look at this face here, that the grain is going in this direction, just as this pencil is like this. Now normally, when you talk about the pea moulding, it's carved along the grain, always in this direction, which is by far the easiest way to work. But here, if I look at some of these that I've done already, we've got the side grain like this. This is pretty much in the orientation of the normal moulding, but along here, down here, we're actually into the end grain, and here's somewhere in between. So this really is the challenge of this project, is trying to get this cleanly cut when you're in these different orientations to the grain. Also, in this carving, we have a quirk here. We have a little piece of wood that we can come in from the side. In this case, I've left that out all entirely. So I've not really helped myself by trying to put this into a bowl like that. But let's see how it goes. We've come back a little bit with the camera so you can see the grips I'm using. This is a place where I'm putting my first set of 3. Now we could use the dividers like this, but a quick way is just to take my gouge and to use the corners to make a little mark on the wood. So that is the width of the chisel, marked into the wood. The first thing I need to do is create this stop cut in between. So there it is, on those little marks. But what I'm going to do, because this wood is really hard, I'm going to actually create more of a groove in this. or a little angled cut down here. So I'm not cutting into where the balls will be, but I'm certainly going to make more down this, more than I would normally do. So we're going to make a nice strong cut in here, and I'm going to push this corner down around like that. So take that out, right down there. So I've chosen the side grain here, so this should be the easiest orientation. And I'm moving onto the gouge, and I'm going to use my mallet here because it's a little bit hardwood. So starting low, make 1/2 of this pea moulding, working round, lifting the handle, and ending on that groove that I've just made. Make sure that's a bit tighter. So I'm going to turn this around so that you can see it, with my hand fitting around. Back to the other side. And I can just clean that up by hand. And as I come down here, I'm going to wriggle a little bit from side to side, so to make that corner take a little bit of that wastewood away. That's going to be our main problem here, is really getting rid of that wastewood. Let me swap that around so you can see in this direction. So round. Very hardwood. Okay, so now I can also go this way and make sure I'm cutting down the size of the ball and make sure those corners cut some of that wastewood. I've also got a gouge which I'm going to be using later, which is the same sort of curve as the one we've just used here, but a bit narrower. And I can use this a little bit to, in particular, do these end bits here, push that corner in a little bit. And we'll find this gouge very useful later on when we start working into the end grain or across the grain. So what I've done is I've now cut those fibres in there as best I can, and now I'm going to dig some of that out. I'm going to use the tip of my skew chisel to sort of break up and work some of this out. I'm not going to lever the skew chisel, I'm just going to try and nick and a little bit of almost scraping there, pull some of that fibres away. They've been cut up quite a lot, so they should come away in this direction. Other than the skew chisel, you could use a little point like this and just pick it out. So as long as the sides are cut, this bottom edge here, another way in which we're going to deal with that. The bottom of the little deltas here between the beads are a bit torn, So we're going to clean them and deepen them a little bit by using this punch. It's a triangular punch I've made from a bolt, but it has got a flattened end. So it's not a point, it's a flat-ended triangular punch. I'm going to push that down there like that. So I'm actually on the wall, down like that, and tap it in. On the other side. And that cleans up the bottom and finishes off those beads. Here I am at the end grain, so the fibres are coming like this pencil up and down in this direction. So I'm working directly into the end of the fibres. When I was doing the initial separating cuts here, the important thing is to be able to slice the cut. So instead of just pushing straight down, slice across like this. Make sure you slice it. And then what's important here is I'm going to be pushing against fibres, so they'll tend to break away. But I've given myself wiggle room here. In other words, I've made this crease there and there between these beads quite big, so that I can sort of move it a little bit like this as I come over, rocking it through the cut. So even as I make that cut round, I'm moving it like this. And that's really the technique for end grain. So I'll do it again over here like this, coming along, giving myself a little bit of room to move round and over. And of course I do it on the other side to match in. A lot of how successful this will be will depend on how tight this grain is. In other words, how much integrity the fibres have together. If they're very loose, then they will tend to pull. So I'll do it the other direction as well. Here. Now if it's tending to tear like this, one of the things you can do is take this smaller tool and come across the grain in this direction with a slice. So you can clean that up in this direction here. And this will be the same whether you're working on the 3/4 or not. You can clean it up like this with a slice. Then you can make sure you've gone down this way as well. And that's where we'll get our complete ball. Complete P. Working on end grain is a little bit tricky to clean up all these effectively ends of the pencil, the ends of the fibres, but I found that coming in at an angle like this here was quite good for cutting them off. All we've got to do is clear away enough so that we've got a nice round edge that we can come with our punch and just clean up as we did before in between. Sliding down that wall in between. Yeah. So those are the end ones finished. So that's the last one, last little batch done. Yeah, I think they've worked out quite well. So there's a side grain and there's an end grain, and anything on 3/4 is going to be a mixture of either of those techniques. You want to make sure your tools are really sharpened and try and make these balls as round as possible. There it is.